All right. Next up is our next inductee, who is Orvin Olivier, who is the current chairman of the U.S. Hall of Fame Selection Committee. He's going to be introduced by, was scheduled to be introduced by Bobby Whitaker, who was a major area business manager, office manager, chief financial officer, social organizer, and much more of the Whitaker family. Included in this family are her husband Matt, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2017. Her daughter Denise and Donna are here, who both at the age of 14 set the world ballooning records. Unfortunately, Bobby came up a little bit ill this weekend, so Donna is here to take her place. Donna, you first.
From the moment Orv was announced to be one of the inductees, she circled the calendar. Nothing was going to ever change this date. And then Orv asked her to speak. So I am going to share the speech she wrote. See, you could tell, evidence, large type. So this is her voice delivered by me. So 93 years old. She's going to be great. She's just at a hotel 2 minutes away, and just unfortunately not well enough to come today. So let's begin. So from mom to you all. Today is a great day. Before Matt passed on, he was on a mission to ensure you got inducted into the Ballooning Hall of Fame. I know Matt is up there cheering more loudly than anyone in this room. Matt and I met Orv in 1973. When he was just 24 years old, a new employee of Raven that had just been transitioned into the ballooning division. He was smart, enthusiastic, and eager to learn everything there was about ballooning to ensure he represented the company well. He helped Matt and me as the first distributor while he built the full distributor network. Ultimately becoming Matt's chief pilot and ambassador, Orv was all in from the start. We love that he was so fully immersed in ballooning that he wanted to become a balloon pilot. That's someone who loves their work. Orv has always been safety first minded. From the beginning, Orv saw the big picture. In order to build this growing sport and commercial balloon business, he chose to be committed not only to the Raven product, but to help build and uplift the entire ballooning community, including pilots who flew other manufactured balloons. This profound love for ballooning as a whole is one of the many reasons that we're all here today. Always a leader, Orv not only loves ballooning, but making our ballooning community the best, strongest, most organized, and professional it can be. He could have chosen to just be a pilot, but he is wired to always give more, to truly build community. He helped build the BFA from a well-organized, productive team. He's devoted over 44 years to the BFA, building the foundation as a board of directors. He single-handedly redesigned the insurance policies, helped create the awards, including the Hall of Fame, and the highly coveted Ed Yost Master Pilot Award, perhaps the most respected recognition in ballooning. He co-chaired the Long Jump Committee, became a frequent organizer and speaker at the BFA conventions, and is a frequent speaker at safety seminars. One of the many things Matt loved about you was that your commitment to training future pilots. If my count is right, Orv has partially or fully trained over 60 students, all for zero charge. Now that's building a ballooning community. When not building the ballooning community nationally, he was building it locally in Sioux Falls. He founded the local ballooning association and the Great Plains Balloon Race. Matt dreamed in the early 60s, when there were just 4 balloons at the St. Paul Winter Carnival, that ballooning would rapidly expand to thousands and thousands of pilots, yet it seems to always hover around 3,000 to 5,000. While we want to keep expanding the ballooning community with enthusiastic, safety-minded individuals, I know we are all so grateful for the many ways Orv has helped preserve the precious history for generations to come. Orv and Jim Thompson have been capturing many stories from the early years as possible. When the Indianola Balloon Museum reopens, look at the wonderful items Orv has contributed. When we think about it, Orv brings history to life. when he showcases the restoration of Ed Yost Channel Champ Raven balloon, the first balloon to fly over the English Channel. Then there's the thermal airship was built by Raven in 1977. He and the wonderful Jim Winker each received the first FAA special authorization to pilot this airship, as the FAA had no aircraft classification or license for this type of aircraft. Matt and our daughter Denise, who flew in to be with us today, were next to get that authorization when they flew commercially for a local bank. While our focus today is Orv's giving back as a community builder in ballooning, I also want to note he's doing the same for his role on the board of Hope Haven International, where he works with a group that builds, restores, distributes, and fits wheelchairs to those in need. In fact, he's heading to Peru in, 2 days? 3 days? Saturday. It's very soon. I could spend the rest of the afternoon telling you about Orv's accomplishments. What he means to the industry. What he, Sharon, Tamara, and Brian mean to us personally as a family. She would have cried too, so I'm really doing it for her. We've had so much fun with Orvin and his family over the years, like flying in many winter carnival and attending balloon races in Minnesota. He was also in Minnesota when Maxie Anderson received his FAI award for flying across the Atlantic. Then we went to Sioux Falls for races, and Orv has been a great partner to Larry, who has been flying the Montgolfier balloon the last couple of years in the Fiesta, because for Orv, it's his 49th year flying in the Fiesta. Orv is part of our family. He always has been, and always will be. He's perhaps the person I like to tease and give the most grief to. Because, come on, tell me these fashions don't inspire some teasing. I'll leave it up to you. That is just like rocketing. I can't imagine how much different ballooning would be today if Orv hadn't chosen to be a ballooning community builder in such a big way. Orv has always avoided the limelight and just focused on giving back. So today is with great joy. We shine the light on you, Orv, and say thank you. Congratulations for being inducted into the Ballooning Hall of Fame. Love to have you.
Next up is Jim Thompson. There he is.
Shorten that up a little bit. Thank you. What I have here in front of me, I wrote, and it's all in the brochures that you have. So I'm not going to follow that. I want to just tell you that I first met Orv when my wife and I took our sons' first hot air balloon to Sioux Falls to Raven to get annual. And that was in 1977. So our history goes back a long time. I have been at his events in South Dakota. I was originally from South Dakota, so it's like going home, and enjoyed our times with him and his family. He was chair of the Hall of Fame committee for the BFA, and extreme induction, and was even prouder when it was accepted. I'm not going to go through everything else I have on the pages, but I want you to know that I consider him my closest friend in the ballooning community. Okay. Thank you very much. Orv. Thank you.
Well, I'm not a public speaker, and after these two talks, I don't even know what to say, other than I'm very honored. The things I came up with were some fun memories, and if you've been in the sport as long as anybody that's probably in the Hall of Fame, Joel and I were telling stories, and everybody that's been around a long time, we tell stories. The early days were some of the most fun days and interesting days. So I thought I'd make a few memories of the early days. First off, people ask me, how'd you end up becoming a balloon pilot? And I always tell the story that as a young kid growing up, I always knew I was going to be a pilot. I just assumed I was going to be an airplane pilot, you know. But I went to work for Raven Industries, and I wasn't in the balloon division at that time, but I wasn't there very long. I had such a strong interest in balloons that they made a position for me in the sales and marketing department of the hot air balloon division, and that's where everything took off from. Back in those days, to get a pilot's license was pretty interesting. The FAA didn't know much about it. Some of the people that take their test, the FAA wouldn't even go up in the balloon. They'd just tell you to go up and fly and land. If you survive that, you get a license. And the requirements to get a license back in those days was there was no commercial license. There was only a private license. And it took 8 hours of training, and you were a commercial instructor. And I see Gary Rubel sitting there. You're part of that group, and I was, and Mike, you were too. And that all changed in late '74, so there was a big rush for people to try to get their license. In my case, in my 8 hours, I had 5 different instructors, and some of them only had a few more hours than I did. And it was really the blind leading the blind. On my very first flight, Jim Winker was going to be my instructor, and we were flying a new prototype rally balloon with a plastic basket, 3 upright 10-gallon tanks, and a single burner. So he talks me through the inflation, and I get the balloon standing up inflating, and I shut the blast valve off. Nothing happens. The blast valve keeps going wide open. And it won't shut. So we finally shut the valve on the tank, and the balloon's standing upright, and Jim says to me, what do you think we should do? I said, I don't know, you're the instructor. He says, you want to try to fly it, just opening and closing the valve in the tank? Well, okay. So that was my first training flight. After about an hour of that, your wrist just like it wants to fall off. You know. But for every blast, you had to open the tank, close the tank. So that was one of my 8 hours. On another flight, I was with, back in those days in Raven, there was a number of people that had their license that never had to be in a balloon. In those days, you could go to the FAA and ask for a license, and they would give you one, even though you'd never flown a balloon or anything. One of my instructors was one of these guys that had a few hours, but very little training, and it wasn't very good, but he took me and another guy up flying. We had kind of a hard landing. In fact, the other two ended up in the hospital. So that was a couple of my training flights, but then I had 2 with a gentleman named Chuck Erler from Louisville, who was a national champion here, and I got a couple of flights with him. But 8 hours, I was a commercial pilot, and I think at 10 hours, I was starting to train somebody, I'm not sure. But I know at that point, and Joe and I were talking about this too, but after 8 hours, and that kind of a training, which left a lot to be desired, every time I got to the ground, I was just glad to be there. And I remember I was at Indianola shortly thereafter, and I was the pilot for Raven there. And I was still very low-hour, and I landed the balloon, and then I saw this balloon coming down behind me, and it came out of the sky and got close to the ground, just leveled out, and went across the ground so nice. I thought, geez, I wonder how the hell he did that. I got to learn to do that. But somehow we survived it all. It was just a wonderful time. A couple of my other early memories were with the rally balloon. We came out with a plastic basket, because Raven had a plastic tank molding division. And some of you people remember those brown rally plastic baskets. And they did a lot of test flying on it and stuff. But I was doing a flight one winter with it in the early days there. Came down into a frozen plowed field. If anybody's ever done that in the Midwest, you know, that dirt is just like a pile of rocks. And we hit that, and the whole bottom of the basket broke out. But I'd been burning quite a bit before I hit the ground, so then we had a big rebound. I'm going up looking at the ground through the bottom of my basket. So it was after that it was probably decided the plastic basket wasn't a good basket. They switched over to wicker. I hit my first thermal at 28 hours, and you can be sure I wasn't at all prepared for that. I think it took me from 100 feet to 1,500 feet. I guess you shouldn't fly so early or so late in the day, right, Joe? Another incident happened to me when I had 40 hours, and I was here at Indianola. And it was during the Nationals, and they canceled the flight that evening because it was dead calm. There was no air movement, and they couldn't even fly a competition, so they canceled it. Well, there was a doctor there, I believe his name was Dr. Wesley. Does that sound right to you, Gary? He was a dentist at any rate, and he had a big home and a big... Dr. West, okay. Well, he was having a big party at his house, a big backyard, and he approached Raven about, why don't you bring a balloon over and tether it at our party? So we did. And it was an aluminum basket, and I remember they had the corner, horseshoes in it and stuff. And the backyard wasn't very deep, so we laid the balloon out this way, and then we put a car off to the side of it like this and tied the tether line to the car. I had the balloon hard packed with air. So then with it laid down 20-gallon tanks, you crawl into the basket, to the bottom of the basket, and you get your head way in the bottom to check for leaks. And I was doing that, and all of a sudden, everything broke loose. The basket just went flying, tumbling over and over and over, and I'm inside of it, not knowing what's going on. People were screaming and yelling. Turns out somebody hopped in the car and drove away. And it was tied, the tie-off was to one of those horseshoes, higher up on the basket. And it took us for a ride. And of course the rope was mowing down people. And at 50 hours of the corporate pilot flying at Fiesta in 1975. And at 68 hours, I flew at the St. Paul Winter Carnival with the Whitakers, which we did many times. Wonderful events and wonderful memories. Thank you to the Whitakers. A couple other memories. I spent a number of years flying at Indianola here. And if you're from out of town, your accommodations were the dorms. And if anybody in the early years remembers staying in the dorms at Indianola, small little rooms, no bathrooms, and one common bathroom down the hall per floor or something. No air conditioning. One of my fond memories was seeing Tucker Comstock show up one year, carrying a window air conditioner from home. It was pretty brutal. Another memory of Indianola, I can't remember his name. I used to know it and I can't think of it, but for the fun players, not the competitors, they were going to have a special event one year, and this is all at the college at the Simpson Field. And it was going to be a distance race, and whoever flew the furthest won. Do you remember the name, Gary? The water tower?
The water tower?
Yeah. What?
Carl Armstrong.
Carl Armstrong, there we go. Well, I was already in the sky. I wasn't part of the race, but I was flying in a corporate balloon. And I was kind of above the water tower, and I'm just watching what's going on down below. But Carl had a Picard balloon, small basket, and he had 6 10-gallon tanks, 3 here, and then a little aisle in the middle where he stood. And he took off, he was competing. He took off, got the balloon just going up, turned around to wave thank you to all the crowd. Turns around and sees the water tower right in front of him. Burns like crazy and just hits the top of that water tower. And it sounded like the biggest gong going off you ever seen. But then he went on to fly 120 miles, and it turned out he flew the furthest. So he came back and he was kind of excited about that. until they enforced the rule that the distance counted from your takeoff to your first contact with anything connected to the ground. Also the Indianola, that I think on Wednesday night they had the attitude, not altitude, the attitude adjustment parties, which were just wonderful times. Great flying and making a lot of friends. One person that I remember giving a flight to, an introductory flight to, was a not a pilot at all, but he was interested, came to Raven. And I gave this guy a flight, and he was super excited about getting involved in it. His name was Cliff Jones. And Cliff had a son that was Steve Jones, and that's what you were just talking about. But that's how it all started. I gave Cliff a training, or not a training flight, but an introductory flight. I didn't know, I don't remember what year it was. So, and then there was the airship. And Donna told about the FAA just giving us a license. They didn't know what to do with this thing. It was 140,000 cubic feet, and it was the same size as the smallest Goodyear blimp, and it was pressurized, and the thing weighed a ton. It was a beast. But I sold, on behalf of Raven, I sold the blimp to a federal savings and loan company called TCF, Twin City Federal. Denise? But anyhow, Midwest. Anyway, we sold it to them, but they needed a pilot, so before they buy it, they had to be guaranteed there'd be a pilot. So, of course, we immediately got him connected with Matt Whitaker. And Matt and Denise flew this thing over the Twin Cities. I don't know how you had the nerve to do that. And I know one time, you blew the side of the blimp out with the pressure where the fabric failed, over the cities, right, Denise?
That I don't remember. I just remember there were times that when you turn the burners on, the pressure would increase. So when you're descending, you have to decide, are we going to take a chance of rupturing it or continuing down?
Yeah. We had a Volkswagen modified aircraft engine on it. We had a little pressure fan for it, and during the training and the early flights, when we were just doing the test flight on it, we had a number of failures, and the thing would turn into a great U-shaped hot air balloon with completely no controls whatsoever. Somehow we got through it, but I still can't believe what Denise and Matt accomplished with that blimp. It was amazing. And anyway, it's been around for a long time. Can always have stories about the crazy things. And some of the crazy things for me was, first one was the 1980 Winter Olympics at Lake Placid, New York. And they had like 30-some balloons there representing each country entered. And I represented China. I grabbed that one. And it was the first year China was involved in the Olympics. Up to that point, they weren't allowed it because they were recognizing Taiwan. And I've had various events with China since then. But at that event, we were part of the opening ceremonies and we were involved in all this stuff. But the FAA was there. And one of the things they did was give us these terrible strong warnings that you are not allowed to fly over the stadium, open air stadium. We have the Vice President of the United States and King of Sweden and all these dignitaries there. It's really prohibited airspace. Of course, they put us all in a semicircle around around the event, gave us flowers to drop on the people if we happened to accidentally go going over them. And we were told that if you do go over them, you better be really climbing fast. Always, we're going to jerk your license if you do. And that was one of the early balloons off, taking a dead bead right on the stadium, perfect on it. So I come close to it, and as a young pilot, I scream up, just like I was told to do. And of course, as soon as I got up, the wind turned me right to the mountains, which was real close in the forest. And I turn around and look behind me, and here comes Sid Cutter, just scraping the top of the stadium. And I'm thinking, what am I doing up here? And there was another balloon with me, too. We both shot up, and I came screaming down as fast as I could, but it was too late. and I'm over forest, and we're heading up a mountainside, and it was snowing at the top of the mountain. You know, and the other balloon with me got about 3/4 of the way up and ditched into the mountain. That balloon was up there for quite a while, and they had to get it out with a helicopter, and it was shredded. But we flew into the snow, got over the snow, and I was trying to come down into the valleys and stuff. There was no civilization, no road, there was no sign of life anywhere. I ended up going over 3 mountain ridges before we saw any sign of life. And there was some small trees and clearings and a lot of little homes. And we put it in there, and the balloon deflated over these small trees. And people came out, and they were so excited. And like the first sign of human life they'd seen in years. You know. And they were all related. And some of them had worked on the stadiums and stuff. But here I had this balloon up there in the trees, and they go out home, get chainsaws, come out, and wind their way through the trees where I was, and they start taking the trees and cutting them down one at a time. And the balloon kept coming closer and closer to the ground. And we finally got to the ground, and then all these people snaked that thing out through the trees to the road. Of course, our crew had no idea where we were, and all we had was CB radios. And so we parked the balloon along the highway, and they brought us into this house and fed us and stuff. And they were just a little shanty shacks, but they were just the most wonderful people. And our crew finally found us, but that was a crazy time. But at any rate, ballooning has been extremely good to me. It's been very good to my family, our friends. We've been very blessed and very fortunate, and I want to thank everybody. And I have a number of people that came here today. I can't believe they've come that distance for this, but I'm very appreciative. You know, John Davis came from Colorado. Kenton, Kendra, and Kennedy Slayton came from Louisville, Kentucky. They were a long-time crew of mine at the Kentucky Derby for many years, and now they've got a number of balloons of their own. You know, Glenn Terry's here, but other people have come, and I'm very appreciative. So thank you very much.
And then Orvin. This says, hey buddy, you want to be a balloon pilot? And he's got treasurer, and he's getting this little guy down here, and then he's got all these things, and the BFA board he has been in. And